Been a great week. We're just learning so much, aren't we? And we have more to talk about in the field and
Mhm.
area of anxiety and stress. So, what is the link between anxiety and depression that we talked about yesterday? What do you see, Mary?
Well, actually, it's not unusual for people to have both. In fact, a recent study said that approximately 70% of people will have both at the same time. Um, th- it, and there can be other mental health issues that combine the two, anxiety and depression as well. So if you look at the symptoms that somebody would experience who has anxiety, they're going to feel the tension, the restlessness, the worrying, but they also struggle with a feeling of a loss of control.
Mm.
And when you have this sense that, oh, I'm powerless and things are happening around you that's creating all this stress, then what happens is you start to feel like something bad is going to happen and I can't do anything to stop it.
Right.
And also, when you're feeling that anxiety and you're feeling overwhelmed, eventually your mood can drop because you feel like there's a sense of hopelessness. Nothing's going to change.
Hmm.
With anxiety, there's often catastrophic thinking. And with that, it's hard to imagine that life will get better. So
Right.
then it can commonly, the client may end up starting to feel anxious
Hmm.
or depressed as a result.
Right.
And they can also have some common causes. There could be genetics. Times of intense stress can also create both anxiety and depression.
Right.
It could be some medical conditions as well. It just tends to go together quite frequently.
Right. Harrison, your thoughts?
My thoughts, when I look at depression, we know it comes from all these different stresses that people go through in life, especially this year or with the pandemic. Anxiety is a reaction to it. So we look at depression, it's more of a chemical based. Anxiety is a reaction to the feeling or the emotions that are affected by the stresses that we go through. And so people get into a panic mode or they start feeling, like overwhelmed, not knowing what can they do. And a lot of them, like it's when I look at anxiety and depression, I look at depression where it can be controlled by, say, for example, different therapy, just like anxiety, but the mind has to be reshifted into understanding that there is solutions when you're feeling anxious. There's ways it's only temporarily with that panic attack a person may feel at that moment because they lost the feeling so fearful of the unknown
Right.
that they can actually work through it. So like Mary says, they are like brothers and sisters. Sometimes when you have a depression, anxiety is right there because you don't know how to
Right.
deal with the feelings of what they're going
Right.
through.
But I've heard hope in all of that. There is hope for
Yes.
either, any of that. We've got stats saying 225,000 businesses could shut down by the end of the pandemic. Wow. And many
Wow.
people are and will be facing financial difficulty due to the pandemic. What impact do you see this having on our overall health? Andrew, your thoughts?
As Mary and Harrison talked about earlier, the ideas that we believe and that we buy into, they can leave us in a place of hopelessness. Yes, the fact may be that the business may close. However, if the belief is that it is the business that sustains me, it is the money that will keep me going, you'll find yourself in an even more difficult place, and a place that I know far too well. Um, there was a time in my life where I believed that money was my source. I needed money. I needed to rely on money, which as believers, we know that runs counter to God being our source
Right.
and us relying on God.
Right.
And I had a really difficult time of really appreciating that, that scripture talks about the love of money is the root of all evil. It's not money, it's the root of all evil. It's the love of, the reliance upon, the buying into that I need this. This is what's going to keep me. This is what's going to save me.
Right.
When the scriptures tell us, oh my soul, hope thou in God,
Mm.
there is great truth in that. However, if we're not realizing what we're actually believing,
You're right.
what we're actually saying to ourselves on the inside, then we'll buy into a particular outcome. Because the truth is, many businesses, if anybody's watching and they're an entrepreneur or they're a
Yeah.
business owner, what do the stats say? Within the first 5 years, most businesses fail.
Mm,
Businesses fail,
yeah.
they will fail. But as we know, even the most successful people, they have failed
Mm,
and they will fail again.
right.
Right. So I'm not trying to downplay the reality about what it looks like for a business closing.
Right.
However, it's important to be able to kind of dig down deep to really discover, what are we believing?
Yeah.
What is our foundation? What are
Very
we
good.
really relying on?
Very good. Money and security in our culture goes hand in hand. Mary, your response?
Yeah, I'm totally resonating with what Andrew was saying. They have shown that with recession comes an impact in mental health, even increase in suicidal behavior. I was talking to a friend not too long ago, and she's not a believer, and she was talking about her kids. And the focus was all about they need to do well in school so that they can get a really good job and that they can be stable. And that was the entire focus. So, as Andrew says, if that's all you have, that's your strength. When you enter a situation where that may be depleted or even taken away, who do you rest on?
Right.
So, I think that's so significant. There is clear evidence that that's what people use as their security base.
Yes, yes.
And it is so unstable.
Well, you've both made that so clear. And we can all say we've experienced putting our hope and security in temporal things, right? And the rug gets pulled
Yeah.
out from under you. But that's where we do find when we put hope in God, it carries us through a lot of those things. What do you see as the tension between then trusting God, which we want to, and feeling overwhelmed by financial challenges? I mean, how can we bring the two together? Harrison?
I believe that we need to understand that regardless of the financial challenges we may face, God is always working behind the scenes. God always have a plan for our life, and that's what I love about God. He does not leave us hanging.
Yeah.
The people who learn to rely on finances, sometimes when the challenges come, it opens up our eyes to realize that our focus cannot be on the material things. It's a privilege when we are blessed with finances, and I tell my children that all the time. We're blessed so we can be a blessing to others. But when there may be businessmen, there may be Christians or other individuals who are struggling, and they're falling into hopelessness. We need to trust that God is working behind the scenes. He's connecting people together. I mean, like today, just connecting with Mary and Andrew for the first time. God is just connecting people because God has a bigger plan.
Yeah.
And when we put our trust in God, I think that's when we see the plan unveiled before our eyes.
Absolutely. Andrew, do you have a quick response before we close this segment?
Yes. I think our culture, we are so unfamiliar with our own emotions that we don't know, we haven't practiced the art and built the skill of sitting with our emotions. Because beneath that panic, beneath that worry, there lives the beliefs, the things that we say to ourselves, the things that we rehearse over and over and over. And when we're still long enough to hear what those things are, then we can contrast them with what we want to believe.
Right.
You can believe more than one thing at a time,
Yeah.
right? So, but it's important for us to choose, because what we truly believe, what we rehearse, we then perform, we then live out. So I think in this crisis, in any crisis, there is always an opportunity for us to grow, because we're not alone. We
Wow.
have the very source of life
Yeah.
living within
Yeah.
us. So it is definitely not the end for us.
That's it. And that's a good word. And we'll be right back with more.